such a special time with us here in the Metanoia webinar. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick sip of water so that I can dive right in and talk about the first time I heard the word metanoia. And the experience was similar to the first time I heard the word synchronicity. And I heard both those words around the same time. It was the fall of 2018, and I started to really commit to my journey of self-discovery and personal development. And what really launched that journey on a more conscious level was in the spring of 2018, I came to this realization that everything that was holding me back in my life and in being happy, abundant, successful came down to one thing. And I said, I just want to learn to love myself, all of myself, even the parts of myself that I hate. And that led me to discover a teacher who brought together these concepts of synchronicity and metanoia. And when I hear words that ring true for me, I have an experience in my body that, as I've described quite frequently, but I will continue to do so, it's almost like a xylophone getting struck by the beater. It's a beautiful sensation that I know feels very divine to me. And when I heard the word metanoia, that happened to me. So I was hearing it in the presentation of a lesson for a concept of emotional alchemy, which we will get into later. And that night, I had a dream. And this was me also coming back to myself, who I am, my multidimensionality, and also my abilities in the dream realm. So in this dream that was so vivid, I was like going around to all these people and I was just saying, metanoia, metanoia, this is the key. This is what everyone's looking for. It's metanoia. And I was so ecstatic in this dream to like be delivering this amazing, delightful, good news to everyone. And guess what? In the dream, they were all like, what? I mean, they couldn't even hear it. But I woke up from the dream and I'm like, I don't care that no one in the dream could understand what I was saying. This is it. This is the key that I've been looking for. And so now I need to understand this on a conscious level and actually really apply it to my conscious life, because that's what dreams give us. They give us these keys, these clues, these symbols that might unlock vast worlds for us in our conscious lives. So that is what happened for me with this word metanoia. And what metanoia means, it's actually a Greek word that is used in the Bible. It's a word that Jesus used when someone asked him, hey, Jesus, how did you get to be so amazing? You multiply loaves and fishes, you walk on water, you raise the dead, you heal the sick, you have this extraordinary level of compassion. What's your secret? And his response was metanoia. Undergo metanoia. And so, of course, the Bible is a very, very old text and written in Greek. Sometimes with these ancient languages, we do not have a direct translation for specific words. And so while metanoia means reverse the flow, well, people want something more direct than that, because what does that mean, reverse the flow? And so when the Bible was interpreted into other languages, guess what word they used? Repent. Repent. That is the word that people, when they were doing these translations, just really gripped onto. And it was sort of like, well, we can really use this to our advantage. If we make everyone think that they need to feel totally horrible, completely guilty, and shameful about who they are and what they do, they will really buy into what we're selling. But of course, that's not what Jesus meant. He said, undergo metanoia, reverse the flow of your being, and really change the way that you interact with yourself and with the world. And so that was his response to like how he reached this level of ascendancy. And so flow, that seems like it's really the key word in all of this. So I want to know, pop into the chat, and I'll be kind of riffing on this as we go along, but what does flow mean to you? What are some terms that come to mind? They could be synonyms. They could be like a collection of words, but what does flow mean to you? It's a very desirable state. It's a noun, it's a verb, it's so many things. Oh, velvet, yes. Ease. Oh, and Tony asks, is that a dream catcher on the wall? Yes, it does work. It catches my dreams. Flow, Devira says, flow, inspired, in spirit. Yes, my daughter asked me the other day what does inspired means, and I said it's full of spirit. Movement, yes. Flow, easy, organic, says Courtney. Mindy says things are running smoothly. Ooh, yes, that smoothness. Stream is a word that comes to mind for me. Not resistant. Dana, yes, not resistant. Surrender, yay. Cecily, surrender is one of my favorite words. Trust, in the zone, and riding the wave. Oh my goodness, these are such amazing definitions and associations for flow. Expand, Brindis, beautiful, thank you. Trust, ease, and divine, says Eileen. Yes, definitely. Also continuity, that things really come together when flow is involved. Course, things, you think of like a river, which is another word for flow. Things coming together, like the water is sort of contained, but able to move in a really powerful way. Hélène, vibrations and energy. Yes, absolument. Ina says to wash out the past and create new future that you want to live by. Ooh, wow. You are striking that xylophone. I love it. Another word is current, same sort of thing, the course and the current of the river. Electricity, you think of like flow, the way that electricity gets conducted through wires. Another word I love is flux. Flux, I feel like, is so important because to me it relates to change, and that is such a huge part of flow, that things will change. I mean, that is the only constant in life. The only absolute certainty is that things will change. And so flux and has that resonance with flow. Ooh, Angela says unbound. Oh, yeah, unbound. And endless flow. I think of a flow, I think of a cycle that is just always kind of going through the motions, the movement, and always, there are no destinations. It's just really this journey that's going on. Of course, there are events, there are rapids, there are currents, there are waterfalls. There are, sort of lulling eddies here and there, but it's always this sort of endless cycle, this amaranthine abundance. Abundance is another big word for flow. I'm interested that didn't actually come up in the chat, but you think of abundance, you give from a place of abundance because you have so much coming into your life. But of course, in giving, we also receive. And ceaseless and plenty. And then another word that I love is float, which I feel like relates to this concept of surrender. Would you've experienced any of my other webinars and presentations? I think surrender for me is just a lifelong theme. And that you can just, you think of like floating. Oh, can I really just float through life? I mean, yes, you have to actively participate, but sometimes you really can just be in the inner tube and like float down the river. Valerie, I love that. Constrictionless, but at the same time, for flow to really work, I think there needs to be structure in place. Like if a river didn't have any banks, it wouldn't get anywhere. It would just sort of like overflow all the time. And I think also flow, really what it means to me is that you live from a place of such profound joy and bliss that no matter what, you are just fully present and grounded and even. Even is another big, big theme for me in my teaching in personal development and also in yoga, which of course they're the same thing. And also flow, not force. Like you can't force the flow. You can just kind of get into it. You can set yourself up for it to experience it. But the minute you try and force it, oh, just disappears. It can be very elusive, but I think because of the nature of its elusivity, it's actually even more accessible. It's just how you're positioning yourself to interact with it. Oh, Lindsay, being connected to all that is. Oh, yes, absolutely. And that's what we have learned so profoundly this year, especially, is that we are all so interconnected, and we all just sort of flow into each other and with ourselves. I love that. Thank you. So I want to do a quick check-in. I imagine I will get so many yeses, so bring on the flow of yeses, but I just want to make sure that everyone has some sort of foundational knowledge and some sort of premise about subtle energy, specifically the chakras. So if you just want to say, yes, I know about the chakras, just say yes, 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 excellent. Yes, very good. Just a little bit. Okay, Bonnie, I will kind of go over it. Just a really brief overview. Yes, Rebecca, Valerie, wonderful. Oh, good. Yes, love all these yeses. Wonderful. I got what you meant, Kara. Tess means yes sometimes, right? Okay, so amazing that we have this sort of premise for the chakras. So super fast, you have 7 energy centers in your being. Tony says, on a technicality, for there to be flow, there must be a point of higher pressure to make the flow to lower pressure. Tony, I love that. Thank you. Okay, so the chakra system, you have 7 energy center points in your physical being. You actually have so many more than that, but we're going to focus on these 7 because, again, they're very accessible and it's sort of a digestible amount of information. So your first chakra is down at the sort of animal area of your body. So your root system. And your second chakra is your sacral area. So that's sort of creativity, sexuality. And then we move up to the solar plexus, which is just below the sternum. And that's kind of where shame tends to like to hang out. And then we have the heart, which is number 4 at the center of the being. And of course, we'll be focusing on that chakra. And then we move into the upper chakras. We have the throat, which is where we have our expression. We have our third eye, which is where we can just see in all directions. And then the crown, which is our connection to the ether and the divine. And so now what tends to happen in our human experience, and this is partly due to societal conditioning, this is partly due to how we're raised, and it's just sort of generally like our modern human experience, that even in the awareness of these chakras, we sort of divide our beings into 3 parts. So we look at sort of the bottom 3 chakras, the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, and we look at those as like sort of undesirable because, again, they relate to our animal nature, that really like base instinct that's within us. And then, you know, we have the heart and like, oh, isn't this so nice? It's so soft and loving and beautiful. And then we take into account these upper chakras. And those seem very appealing because that's the connection to the spirit world and to our spirit and to our soul. And so we kind of like want to exist up here. And these upper chakras tend to flow upward. And the lower chakras, because they don't have, you know, the same appeal as the upper chakras, we tend to deny and repress them and push them down and away, like towards the earth. So that creates this like really profound division in our beings. The upper chakras going up, the lower chakras going down. And then what is the heart doing? The heart is just like, hello, I'm the most powerful machine in the universe. Can you please use me? Can you please use me? So that's what we're doing with metanoia. We're reversing those two flows so that instead of down, away, and out, and up, and up, and out, we bring them both into the heart. And this also relates to uniting our will and what we really want in the world and how we get it. Like what we want, why we want it, how we're going to get it. And that's where the practical aspect of my life coaching comes into play. And I've got a lot of sun pouring in right now, so my lighting might get a little wonky, but we're going to just keep going with it. And so the heart is at the center of the being. It's at the core of your being. And Hélène, I know that you'll respond to this. It's le cœur. Le cœur is the heart, the core, the center. So with that, I think maybe just like soak that in for a minute, sort of this concept that we might not even really be aware of the fact that this so much energy is going up, so much energy is going down, and that we can create this really new sort of structure, this this guidance system, this place for our concept of flow, of joy, of bliss, of constrictionless, of being unbounded, just giving it the container that it really desires to be really profoundly powerful and forceful in a beautiful, loving, and beneficial way. So how do we get there? You know, we've got this like concept and what it, you know, it seems like intellectually, like we can understand this approach and this vision, this, you know, illustration that I have relayed, but how do we get there? What do we do? You know, we're all about the how. Give me the how. Well, here we go. 3 strategies. Number 1, come home. Number 2, make space. And number 3, alchemize. Okay, that's it. Everyone can go now. I'm just kidding. I'm going to unpack those. So number 1, come home. I had a wonderful experience in last spring. Actually, I have a lot of liminal experiences as I'm coming back into conscious awareness from the dreamscape. And I just received this message that said, come home to yourself. Come home to yourself. And that is something that is so easy to move away from. And it happens again for so many reasons. We're not necessarily given the tools to understand who we are, how we want to show up in the world, what our purpose is, and to really live from our hearts, because that doesn't necessarily fit in with how our society is structured. And that's not to say that we don't have amazing aspects of our modern society. I mean, it's pretty cool in a lot of ways. But it has contributed especially to this denial of the animal self in those lower chakras, that like, oh, that's like the smelly stuff. We're not going to deal with that. And that then translates to how we cope with our emotions. And in that coping, then how we interact with our experience, what happens to us, where we end up, it's all interconnected and all interrelated. So this concept of come home is really come home to your truth, your purpose, your passion. Come home to your potential and to the temple that is your body. I mean, I look at the body as being this unbelievable representation, again, of those lower chakras. Like, it can be very inconvenient to have a body sometimes. It can be very painful, but it's also absolutely amazing that we get to experience this incarnation, to be incarnate, to be in this carnal body with these carnal needs and these carnal drives. And so I really look at this concept of come home as know yourself. And when you know yourself, oh my goodness, that is when you're really tapping into that unlimited flow of potential and purpose and passion and joy and bliss. Whoa, all of it is right there just in knowing yourself. Of course, knowing yourself is a journey, but it's a beautiful one, a really, really beautiful one. Okay, and so come home is number one. Number two is make space. So at the beginning of every moon cycle, I do a little reflecting on what might be a good theme for that time frame. And so this new moon, we have a new moon coming up on the 15th. So when I did this in October, I kept hearing the term make space. And so you think of this concept of come home, and you almost look at home as a house, and your body is the house for your spirit. So how can you make space in your body for your spirit, for your experience, for your joy and your bliss? Because sometimes we don't feel happy, we don't feel joyful, we don't feel blissful because we haven't created the space to welcome that in. So making space is sort of this movement of energy. And of course, everything is energy. Our thoughts, our emotions are energy. Our shoes are energy. Our clothes are energy. Our food is energy. So especially to me, this concept of making space pertains particularly to your physical environment, because our physical environment is a direct reflection of our internal landscape. So when you make space in your physical environment, which is to me like one of the most accessible ways to make space, then that creates a positioning of you entering into a new state of flow. Because when you look around and it's like, oh, this changed and this is more organized and I can find things here, then that says something to your psyche about what's going on in the external world. And then that is going to be happening also in the internal world. So when you start making space in your physical environment, then you're going to start creating space in your emotional, mental, spiritual, and psychic environments as well. And the physical environment, this could be something as simple as lining up your shoes in your closet, whether you're male or female in your gender. I promise you, this is like the most immediate way to create like a total overhaul in your interaction with that physical space. It's like making your bed. You make your bed and the whole room looks clean. You line up your shoes in your closet and the whole closet looks clean, even if it's some piles here and there and you have to sort of dig through things. The shoes are lined up. It's amazing what happens. And I, of course, come from a background of, I sort of started my life coaching through the lens of personal style. So I love the closet metaphor. And of course, our closet also pertains to our psyche and our deep unconscious mind. So yes, come home to yourself, to your passion, your purpose, your truth. And in this process of coming home, make space. And I recommend starting with the physical world. Number 3 is my favorite, alchemize. So where am I going to start with alchemize? I'm going to start with a definition of alchemy. So the ancient alchemists sought to transmute lead into gold. And they were so obsessed with making this process work that they just were super committed to turning one substance that, you know, had some benefits and some good uses into something that was like the ultimate desirable metal. And they spent many, many hundreds of years, centuries, trying to accomplish this. And it actually is possible to physically turn lead into gold. We have discovered that it is possible. They were never able to technically do it, but that literal approach to turning lead into gold has a very figurative relationship to what we do with our own emotional alchemy. That you think about some of the emotions that you might have, some of the traumas that you've experienced, some of the sad moments in your life, maybe even grief. And again, in our society, it's like, oh, very undesirable emotions, repress them, get rid of them, shove them down, shove them away, and they'll just disappear, which of course does not happen. They disappear into our unconscious minds, and then they sort of germinate, and maybe they take a different form, but then they come out sideways. And I have a lot of personal experience with what that looks like. And I also have a lot of personal experience in what it looks like to really unearth and excavate what has been repressed into the unconscious mind and into the shadow, and bringing it into the light and taking a look at it and realizing that in all that shit, there is actually gold as well. But it's just about your interaction with it, what kind of love you're giving it, what kind of approval, and what you're doing consciously to transmute what was very painful and probably awful, so that you can actually move forward in life and you can stop repeating patterns over and over again and feel like you have the same things happening to you over and over again in different versions, and thinking that some sort of fate is controlling your life. You are in control of your life. You are in control of your experience. And when you alchemize what, again, might not be super desirable and sort of scary, it sets you free. Absolutely liberates you and creates this incredible opening of your ability. It literally makes space in a new way. It's like discovering, some forgotten jacket that you had shoved in the closet that was just, you thought it was taking up space, and you pull it out and it's like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. This is not necessarily easy, but it can be very fun. So this process of alchemy is also considered sort of the work against nature, because again, that natural flow is up this way, down the other way, and the heart just hangs out. So in this process of metanoia, we're bringing it all together into the heart, which is the golden center of our being. And it really is, I look at it and it's like, okay, we're sort of shown that emotions are dangerous and make us unpredictable, especially as women. And so it's like, don't feel, don't be so emotional. Don't be so reactive, so responsive. Just let it go, right? How many people have heard that? Just let it go. I heard that so many times growing up, and even in my adult life. Just let it go. Just water off a duck's back. Why do you get so upset? Just let it go. Well, I say, don't just let it go. Alchemize it. Because if something is happening to you, some sort of situation or experience, it's happening for a reason, and you might actually, on a very deep level, be willing to experience it, or that you were willing to experience it. And if something keeps coming up, it's because you are being presented with an opportunity to heal yourself around it. Okay, so that's alchemy right there, emotional alchemy. And that is a process that I am trained in specifically. It's called existential kink. It's a form of rapid shadow integration that produces just extraordinary results. So let's go over those three one more time. Number one, come home. Number two, make space. And number three, Alchemize, alchemize, alchemize. Carol, I see you have your hand raised. If you want to pop a question into the chat, I'm happy to answer that. And I'd love to know, everyone, which one of those like really maybe like struck the xylophone for you. Was it number 1, come home, number 2, make space, or number 3, alchemize? Was there any one of those in particular that really spoke to you on a deep level? Alchemize, Bonnie, yes. Chanel, number 3, alchemize. I did. I come home. Brenda, yes. I mean, that is the first step to come home. Valerie, number 1 and number 3. Ina, come home. Yes, everyone, we need to come home to ourselves. We've gotten so far away. But you have to sometimes move away. You have to sometimes move away. Courtney, especially number 3 of the rapid shadow integration. I'm so glad, because we're going to be talking about that. That's the premise of my group coaching program, Courageous, that we'll cover in just a moment. But again, like coming home to yourself, coming home especially to your infinite self. I don't know if anyone attended my encapsulation webinar on the 26th of October. But the infinite self, it just always lives within you. It was always there throughout your childhood. It is there already in your future life. It is there with you right now. And you have access to all of that amazing wisdom, all of that healing, all of that insight, all of that guidance. So that is there's so many benefits to all of this, to coming home, to making space, and to alchemizing. Don't just let it go, alchemize it. Cecily says, alchemize. I'm really looking into shadow at the moment. Also clearing, massively need to declutter my living space. Using this lockdown for some space making. I love that. Yes, we've been presented an incredible opportunity. Let's let go, surrender all of that like gripping and holding on to and like attachment, right? Number 3, the most, I'm focused here, Devera, I love that. Number 3, by a short half, head over number 1. Oh, Velvet, number 2, yes, making space. You know, it's like we have to make the space for the happiness, the joy, and the bliss. And maybe there have been things that have come into your life that are just taking up space, that it's like valuable real estate in your being, in your consciousness, in your mind, that you would really like to fill with other things, and again, back to the metaphor of the closet. It's like sometimes you have to get rid of the old, holy, yellowed, white t-shirt in order to welcome in a new one and start anew. Kara says, clear out the psychic emotional trash in my life. Yeah, totally. Eileen says, remembering the fairy tale of spinning straw into gold. Ooh, Eileen, I love that. Which fairy tale is that? Can you remind us? I'd love to know. Who spun straw into gold? Was it Rumpelstiltskin? Yes. It is. I have not. I'll have to revisit that one. I don't think I've read that to my daughter. I'll have to see. It's okay. We got it. We absolutely got it. Okay, so everyone, it's time now to move into the next portion of our webinar. And I will be presenting now on Courageous, which is my group coaching program. I'm going to share my screen in just a moment. I want to refer to my notes. I get so excited to share this. This is my signature program for delivering all of these amazing tools that I have amassed myself, and just delivering them in a really effective and fun way. So as I said before, like diving into your shadow is sexy and intriguing, not always fun, or not always easy, excuse me, but we have a lot of fun doing it. And when you're having fun, things feel easier. So this takes a lot of courage to do, which is why I named it Courageous. And again, it just takes a really caring, earnest, and profound profoundly dedicated approach to your results and your experience. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to share my screen here and pull up the